Good afternoon, evening, hello, welcome to Edinburgh, blah-de-blah. My name's Deborah Williams. I'm the Executive Director cum Chief Executive Officer of the Creative Diversity Network. And thank you for coming to our session today. We're going to do some delivering diversity from 90210 to E20. It sounded good when we were putting it all together. And it still does now, so that's all good, and that's all cool. Couple of things just to say. It's an interactive session, as much as we can make it. So do post a question on the app if you have one. We'll take some questions at the end of the session. Good ones, obviously, will be really helpful. If you are tweeting, our hashtag is #IEndorsediamond, capital I, endorse diamond. And if you would like to see the report, which is now live on our website, go to creativediversitynetwork.com/diamond. It is called The First Cut, and you can download it from there and peruse it at your leisure over the next 3 days. Is that all I've got to say? Yes, it is. There was someone who was supposed to be here today who, and this is a real story, it's genuine, who can't. I'm just going to tell you why she can't. She was she was carrying her suitcase down the stairs at 4 o'clock this morning to get her plane to come to the festival. She fell down the stairs. She's fine. She's absolutely fine. But I did say I would mention it, and her colleague Kathy is here. And I did say I would mention it because that's how important diversity is. Her name's Hamida Ali. She works at Equity, and she's here in spirit, I think, and I hope. And she's going to be fine. She's absolutely fine. It's just soft tissue problems. But she's more annoyed that she can't. She's genuinely more annoyed that she can't be here and that she didn't take 2 trips and carrying a suitcase down the stairs and bits of other pieces. But anyway, that aside, what am I talking about? So I'm going to talk a little bit for about another 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, around Diamond the First Cut, which is the first report sharing the first lot of data from Project Diamond, the mythical unicorn that has been around everyone's life, involved in diversity in television for the past few years. It's high-level data sharing. It's predominantly metadata. It's the first of anything anywhere in the world. It is complex. It's exciting. It's challenging. And I hope you're going to enjoy it and continue with us on the journey we're going to take. I'm then going to introduce a panel of people. They're not just sitting here for the sake of it, just to have some white people on stage. They're actually really quite significant and really important, and they're going to share some great stuff. I had to break the ice somehow, and they are going to share some great stuff. We're then going to do a bit of a talk amongst, talk and facilitate some questions and bits. Open up to you guys at the end, so you can tear into us like Tiny Tim on a ham at Christmas and ask us questions and the rest of it. We'll then let you go around about 5:15, so you can go to the toilet, get a drink, and head to McTaggart. But I do genuinely want to thank you all for being here and for engaging with us today. So I'm now going to flick through very quickly the highlights of Project Diamond, the first lot of data, Diamond the First Cut. Where am I going? There we go. So you don't want that. So the first thing to say is the report that you can download contains 80,804 contributions from 5,904 individuals. I'm just reading these off the slides, which is approximately 24%, which means that about a quarter of the people who were asked responded, which is it's a modest completion rate, but for a project that's 11 months old and brand new and voluntary, it's not too bad. We're not going to beat ourselves up about that, I think. It continues to grow because it's a live system. So as we speak, those numbers have probably changed. But this report did go to print, a week ago. So we had to stop somewhere, really, and take a pause moment. So the first thing I want to do is thank everybody who contributed, everybody who filled in a form, and everybody who engaged with Diamond. Because without you, it wouldn't be Diamond, and it wouldn't exist. The best thing about all of that, though, is the disclosure rate. So whilst 24% of people, so a quarter, it was the modest completion rate, the disclosure rate is incredibly high. The people are least likely to disclose their age, which sits at around 90%, and are most likely to disclose their gender, which sits around 99%. So actually, when people get the form, they fill it in. And we have to be hopeful and I think that's a great thing. And so the more forms we get out, hopefully, the more people will fill it in, and we'll maintain that disclosure rate. And we'll be able to get a good benchmark and a good comparable data set. For those of you who don't know, Diamond collects data in two parts. One is actual data, and that's split into two in itself, so actual on-screen and then actual off-screen. So one person can make one contribution, or they can make 10 contributions. At the moment, we don't know what that breakdown is, because at the time of the report going together, we only had contributions. But we are, Stuart and Amy are sitting on the front row here, pretending they don't know who I am. They're actually the project managers for Diamond, so they've been doing all the real work around the project. And we are hopefully, you know, they fly back tonight, and tomorrow they have to continue working. I'm staying till the weekend. And they have to continue sort of doing some analysis and trying to think about where we go next and what the next lot of data may look like for us to start thinking about. But at the time of we have contributions only, so we don't quite know the number of contributors and how many contributions an individual is making, but it's coming, and that's the next step for us to look forward to. So the first lot is actual on-screen data, broken down by 6 protected characteristic groups that the project looks at, which is gender, gender identity, age, ethnic origin, sexual orientation and disability. As you'll see, it speaks for itself, really. I mean, that's essentially the metadata, so that's essentially the contributions that are in the system, which is looking at 24, the highest percentage in there. It is, you know, gender, female, which is 48.1%. We then have a sort of looking at age and ethnic origin. They're sort of sitting at 24 and 21%. LGB is 13%, and disability I can't see down there, but it's 6.5%. So that's okay, I guess, really, isn't it? That's not too bad in terms of contributions that we've had. And across the 6 protected characteristic groups, we're looking at, in the long term, we're looking at using this set alongside. Is this workforce or is this national population? This is population. So hopefully, eventually, when we get enough data, we're hoping to work towards thinking about answering the first question of Diamond, of, you know, does the representation within Diamond working in television industry, is it comparable with with the population? We don't know. We've got no ideas yet, and we're not going to make assumptions because we don't feel it's appropriate at the moment. The second is actual off-screen, which is a whole different ball game. Gender female is slightly higher than on-screen. It's 54%. Oh, well, it's actually 55%. Then you look at age and ethnic origin, and then you're looking at percentage drops, which are significant and relevant, I think. Fair enough to say. But disability and LGB are sort of around the same. I think this, for us, for the CDN, is the bit that we're most interested in exploring more and working with our members with and working with the industry with, and getting a better understanding of what this means. We will also, in the next few weeks, be able to look at job roles and be able to look at genres and really start digging into this data and looking at where people are working in the industry, on screen and off screen, what job roles they have, and all the questions around seniority and the wider questions that are around in the industry at the moment. It's going to be great. It really is. I promise. It's going to be very interesting. I'm interested in it anyway, and I know the team are, and I know the CDN members are, and the Diamond broadcasters are. So that's basically it. That's the on-screen actual and off-screen actual data sets. The other set of data that is collected in Diamond is perceived data, which is essentially once a program's all sorted and it's about to go to bed, someone watches it and thinks about, from an audience perspective, what protected characteristics are represented on screen. So the data for perceived is sitting here around those 6 protected characteristic groups, which is sort of the middle ground. To me, it looks like it's a bit in the middle ground of the data, the 2 sets we have in terms of actual. And But more work needs doing, and we're aware of that. We're sort of going to be exploring how we can dig deeper into perceived data, because it is done by an individual. Obviously, there are issues around how people perceive, and bias or non-bias included in that. So it's going to be interesting to look at, and also sort of looking at the number of contributions. It's almost 300,000 contributions, which is three times as much as the actual contributions. So again, we need to start exploring, digging deeper into the data, into data sets, across all of the reporting, across the entire system, looking at what this means for the industry and how, as an industry, we can start working together to drive things forward. Where do we really need to start thinking about things? I'm going to shut up very shortly, I promise. And then, lastly, this is just sort of let the games commence. As far as we're concerned, this is the first step, and this is setting the tone and the vision for where Diamond will go next. This is just the highlighting of what we're going to be doing. We're going to be broadening the scope of broadcast of programming, looking at additional broadcasters, overseeing the development of the reporting functionality that's not yet there to give us much more data and access to data. We're going to be working with Dan Brook in his capacity as his DWP disability ambassador, looking at how we can create an action plan for disability for the industry. And we're also going to be working with the Open Data Institute, looking at how you turn data into something that is impactful. You can use it to engage internally, externally with stakeholders, and moving it beyond who we are, where we are at the moment, and the industry as is. I think that's it, really. Those are the highlights of Project Diamond, the first set of data that's come out. The report, as I said, is on the website. Please download it and have a look at it and engage with it. Send us questions, start having the next point, the next level of conversation, I guess, really. We're looking forward to it. The broadcast is looking forward to it. And I hope you all are. Those are the highlights of Diamond, really. And that's it from me. I'm going to now sort of bring in the panel, and hopefully we can talk a little bit about people that are doing it and what's working, what's not working, and where we're going to go next. I think that's right. Yes, so there we go. I'm just checking that I've got this right. Okay, so first I'm going to introduce Laura Corcoyan. I do apologise, I've had a day of names, and I have asked everyone. And Laura's going to show her clip and talk to us about who she is, what she does, and we're going to have a bit of a chat, really.
So this clip is, I'm Laura Corcoyan, and I'm one of the executive producers and directors of a series called Born This Way, produced by Buna Murray Productions for the A&E Network. And the clip I'm going to show you will introduce the 7 young adults with Down syndrome who are, my heart and my soul, and have brought great excitement to my life. And I'll tell you a little bit more as we continue to talk. But here's the introduction for season 1. We call it a cold open, where we introduce the cast. So here you go.
We are 7 friends. Each unique,
but with one thing in common.
Down syndrome.
But that doesn't define us.
This is our story.
Okay, Mr. DeVille, I'm ready for my close-up. Some people think people with disabilities never could make it big. How can I say this politely? Screw you. You can make your life anything you want.
What I want is to buy a house with my boyfriend and I. My goal is to inspire people with my work.
Say something to me.
I'm sexy.
I know you're sexy. What else are you?
Hot.
I'm kind of boy crazy.
I kind of feel like I'm like the Matt Damon of the bunch.
Hey, what's up, players? What's up, pimps?
Let's get this over.
I got hopes, dreams, everything that you have, I have.
I am very typical 22-year-old girl.
I play golf.
I love to cook. Also, I like poetry.
My dream is to get married.
I want a girlfriend. I want a car. I want independence.
If you don't want people to treat you different, don't treat me different.
I do have a story to tell. Don't be afraid of me. I don't bite.
Woo!
When people look at you, what do you want them to see?
The real me.
So that was easy, right? It was easy getting that made, it was easy getting that commissioned, and there were no problems at all?
Not at all. Not
Okay,
one.
cool.
Not
So,
one.
Charlie. So, Laura, talk to us about Born This Way, how it got here, and what, if any, problems you may have had on the way.
So we just completed season 3. So when we started, from the pilot, the problematic aspect was selling the show. You know, being able to find a network that wanted to support our vision, saw our vision. We didn't see it any differently than the shows we've done in the past. Jonathan Murray, who is the owner of Bunham Murray Productions and created The Real World along with Mary Alice Bunham, his late partner, we tell stories. And why not tell the stories of young adults with Down syndrome? Why would that be any different than telling the stories of 7 young adults from different parts of the world, racial backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, sexual orientation on The Real World? So I think initially the problem was finding a network and finding a home that wasn't afraid to take a risk. And we found a great home and great partners with the brilliant A&E network. I really can't say enough because working with them has really helped us to elevate the show. So when we started and they bought the series, I thought, season 1, it's going to be a great season 1, but we probably won't see a season 2 or a season 3. And here we are, 3 seasons in. We won an Emmy Award last year for Best Unstructured Reality Programming. We're up for our 2nd Emmy nomination for this year. We have actually 6 this year for cinematography and for editing. And it's not about the Emmys for me, but certainly looking in America and at the Academy, Emmys are definitely given to shows that are making a difference. And I started in reality TV. I was a psychologist and came to work at Bunham Murray. And I was like, what am I doing for a minute? I'm a psychologist. I'm going to help people. I'm going to go into television. But I've been fortunate that with the programming that I've been able to do, it's like a perfect marriage. So it's really, like I said, it wasn't about the Emmy, but it's really nice to see that these young adults are being validated for the stories they have to tell. And it's not necessarily about the way they were born.
And where do you see going next? What do you see happening next with it? Season 4's here, so where do we think we're going to go next?
I'm waiting for the news about a season 4. And, the show continues to elevate. Sometimes when I look at that clip, I think of how much they've changed, the 7 young adults on the series, how much they've grown and changed. I think the show has given them confidence. They inspire each other. They kind of light a fire underneath each other. But it's not like jealousy. On the other shows that I work on, everyone's trying to one-up the other cast member. But on this show, they actually inspire each other to want to be even better and to reach their dreams. And so they see one person doing it and they're like, I want to do that too. Now, of course, they all want to be singers and rappers and things like that. And so I have to always kind of bring them back to, no, let's follow your dream. But I think it can continue. I don't see why it's going to stop. And, I sometimes get mad at myself for even believing that I didn't think it would go on beyond season 1 because I didn't know if the American audience was really ready to see people who are different on television, but they're not any different than the rest of us. And so in terms of problems, Deborah asked me earlier, what were some of your problems? I'm like, they're easier to deal with than a Real World cast member or a Bad Girls Club cast member. I don't have to deal with a lot of the debauchery that happens on those shows. I can sleep at night. But honestly, they're a pleasure to work with. They want to come to work. They want to do their best. They want to tell their stories. But you do have to change the way you do things just a little bit. I can probably only shoot with them for a certain number of hours in a day before maybe they get a little tired. And everyone's different, so they're not all the same, all 7 of them. One of them can work until 10 o'clock at night. In fact, when I'm like, okay, we're done, we're going to wrap for tonight, they're like, really? I want to keep going. But I think sometimes you just have to change a little bit of how we do things. I have to be very patient. If they're not in the mood to do something, we don't force them to do it. It is real in the fact that we sit and meet with them at the beginning of a season. We talk about what's going on in their lives, and then from there we sort of shape our stories that we're going to tell. Most of them live about 2 hours away from our production office, so we spend a large majority of our time on the freeway trying to get to them, or bringing them to us, and they fall asleep in the car, and then when they get there, we take some time to get motivated and get our energy up. But they are probably the best cast I've ever worked with, in that they really want the show to succeed. Like I said, they really want to tell their stories. So I think the other last challenge, and then I can move on from this point, is they are all adults. They're 20 to 34. That's the range. And so they can make their decisions. They're not conserved. They have the ability to make all their own decisions, but their parents are still a very important part of the process. And it's important to us to have the parents' trust. This series would not have been as successful as it is today if we did not have the trust of the parents. And all the young adults make their own decisions. They tell us what they want us to document, but I still need to always check in with their parents and just make sure they're comfortable with everything, because for so long they've been the most important force in the lives of these young adults. And now what we're seeing as the series is moving on. They all want more independence. They want to finally move away from home and live on their own. And the parents are like, oh my goodness, what have we gotten ourselves into? And although they're very excited, there's also that element of making sure that the parents feel safe as they watch their young adults moving on.
Thank you. We'll come back and we'll have more of a conversation. So moving on to the next on panel is Charlie Phoebe. Please introduce yourself and your clip.
So I'm Charlie. I'm head of casting at October Films and cast programmes for the UK and for the US. And here's my clip.
No, within
You were
time.
timing it, weren't you?
No.
I was sitting in the edit
all.
thinking,
Yeah, all right, okay, easy. All right. There are people in the room. Inclusive casting. Talk to us about inclusive casting.
Okay, so it starts from day one. Often people see diversity casting as this added extra. So while you're casting, you have this extra thing that you need to do, almost like a box-ticking exercise. You have to deliver, you have to do this. But to be honest, from day one in casting, you should build your ideal cast in your mind, on paper. I'm quite sad, so I sit there in Photoshop and make myself mood boards. But you should be able to imagine who you want to see on screen. What will their backstory be? What will they be doing while being on camera? And when you start doing that, if all you can imagine is a white, male, heterosexual, able-bodied person, that's what you're going to get. So, for instance, I was working on a project recently, set out of New York, and was looking for an African-American stylist to take part in this particular series. And I completely built who I wanted to see, all the way down to what he'd be wearing, what his fashion was. I actually imagined him coming down, heading towards camera on a skateboard, and I knew that I wanted him to have a tattoo on his neck. And off the back of that, by actually imagining who you want to see on screen, you can then deconstruct. And then once I was able to deconstruct, I was able to make a formula to say, where would I target? Where would this person be? Where would this person hang out? And that evolved into hitting up tattoo parlours which specialised in black skin, and able to say, do you know anyone who actually comes in that would fit this particular brief? Or very oddly contacting a couple of fashion shops and saying, I imagine this person wearing this particular hat, do you know anyone that comes in? So you're able to actually imagine who you want to see on screen from day one. And I think if you actually get to the point where you're halfway through or nearer to the end of your casting, and you look at your top sheets and you think, oh, we now need diversity, that's where you've gone wrong. Because at that point, you really are just trying to pick people from wherever you can grab them. So from day one, you need to start with, this is what I want, this is what I will get, and this is what I will find.
Do you find that challenges working? Is it different in the UK and the US?
No, because it's the same formula. I mean, you will obviously have to work out what you want and then look at different demographics in different areas. Of course, you have to do that. But there's no real difference between the UK and the US. You have to start off with your formula. I mean, a lot of people imagine casting as throwing mud left, right and centre, seeing what comes into you. And that's a very passive way of casting. So you need to know what you want before you go out. And the worst thing is I see people picking phones up and sending out casting calls and all the rest of it without actually knowing what they want to see on screen.
So really, so people need to know what they're doing, know what they're looking for, and be proactive about it, going out and seeking it.
Yeah.
And literally pointing out and going, I want you.
Yeah.
Almost.
I mean, my other half will often tell me off because I will be laying in bed, and you're laughing at this because you know it's true, with my phone out looking at 2 o'clock in the morning using hashtags and whatever it may be. So, like, for instance, the clips that you saw from migrations, for that particular show, we were looking for 20 Americans to cross the Serengeti. Now, obviously, the foundation, the bread and butter would be they would be survivalists, off-gridders, people that could survive out in the wilderness. But that was it. And that is quite an open brief. When you think about it, it really is. And I always knew that I wanted someone with a disability. And I also knew that I wanted someone that could relate to First Peoples. Because the first episode, the herd, as we called them, that's not what I call everyone in casting, it's just that particular programme, were going to be meeting the Hadza, who are hunter-gatherers and the oldest tribe in Africa. And through that, you also imagine, well, when you're thinking of this cast member that you want, I was thinking, well, when it comes to Tomapaku, I was thinking, well, I want someone on an island because it's completely different terrain to what he'll be used to. And then just by looking at native Hawaiians, I then found a particular surfboard, which has been going back 2,000 years. And then by using a hashtag on Instagram, there was Tom. Similar kind of thing with Reggie. Reggie's an amazing character.
And who's Reggie?
Reggie was the guy you saw at the very end.
You said, don't mess with me.
Don't mess with Reggie. Don't mess with Reggie. I love Reggie. And similar kind of story, actually, looking for someone that was quite proactive. Reggie skateboards. Nothing about skateboarding, clearly. He skateboards, he skydives, he does everything that any of the other cast members could do but don't. And
he's a double amputee.
He's a double amputee. And for him, I mean, it was all about communication. It really was. I mean, going back to that day one of thinking, this is what I want to see, lining up, these are the people I want on camera, even though they're not real, and you just construct them, it always comes down to respect and communication. So with Reggie, when I was speaking with Reggie, I'd say, look, you have a disability. This is something that most people assume. You cannot walk the Serengeti. This is not going to happen. And because we had a very good dialogue, we were able to talk about it. And for that particular project, we were casting in London, across America, all 50 states, and then met with the final 50, I think it was at the end, in New York.
Okay.
And sat there, I don't know if I should say this.
We're going to have to.
I know. But sitting there with sort of like the panel from the network, and sat there with Reggie and was able to ask him proper questions. How will this affect you? How will this affect your disability? And he was honest and frank about how he thought it would. Of course, he couldn't say how it would because he'd never done it before.
I imagined it would.
So for all of this, I mean, what I would just go full circle is it comes back down to respect and actually talking to the individual about their needs, whatever their needs may be, and starting from day one and including diversity into your mainstream casting because it is one and the same.
Thank you very much, Charlie. Finally, I am so chuffed to announce, and I'm going to do this joke, even though it's a bad joke, but I'm bad joke queen. The Hoff is on our panel. But it's not the one you think it is, as you can clearly see. It's Jamie Hindhoff. There you go, that's the gag. He's the COO of BT Sport, and they are also, which is the reason why I adore him, they are also joining the CDN. So BT Sport will become, our fingers crossing, hoping to become a member of CDN and to become the 6th Diamond broadcaster. That's all I need to say, really. This is Jamie, the Hindhoff.
Yeah, I did want to throw out, you're too bloody young to know who Hasselhoff is, I think, to be perfectly honest. And it's not a good analogy. I wanted a picture of me pissed eating a burger, but it didn't quite work. So I haven't got a video. So obviously I didn't fall down the stairs and they rushed me in. But we've got some nice pictures here, and as Deb's quite nicely said, we are hoping to be the newest member of CDN. And this falls in line. We are one of the newest multi-channel broadcasters in the UK. We specialise in sport and entertainment. We're only 4 years old, and believe it or not, 5 years ago, BT Sport hadn't even been conceived. So we had 9 months to build a 13-channel outlet, sports broadcaster from production hub right through to creating the production teams to going on air and being on air ever since. And there is a massive challenge around that, around access to people and how you do it. So with that speed, we had to bring in the right expertise and do that. But one of the things we did do was the opportunity is we actually built our production hub, which is 86,000 square foot, biggest TV studio in the UK, in Stratford in the Olympic Park. So we moved ourselves into the most diverse community I think there is in London and across the UK. And with that came some real opportunity, and we really tried to embrace that, because the other benefit of launching BT Sport from scratch was we had to build a new team. And therefore we had the opportunity, which not many people get, to create our own culture from the start. And what I really wanted to do was embrace Stratford. I worked on the Olympics before for the BBC, and I wanted us to start being part of the community, and to be blunt, not creating the Sun City of Stratford, where we all travel in from West London past all the people that live there and do our jobs. So we've worked really hard, and it's been a huge challenge in less than 4 years on various different aspects. And for me, the most important thing, I'm a huge supporter of apprentices. And we've already done one tranche of apprenticeship schemes where we actually targeted the 6 boroughs that were affected or stroke displaced by the Olympics, to actually bring that community in. All of those people that came in are now in full-time jobs. Half of them have been promoted within BT Sport. And the great news is we've got another tranche coming in a few weeks, actually. The same principle, the same process. And staggeringly, it means that about 8.5% of our total workforce will be from apprentices from the local community within 4 years, which we think is phenomenal. But it's also, for me, it's really important. It's about the culture of the team you build and about expectations. So we do a lot of open door sessions where we bring young kids in to talk about our careers, where we've got to, because there's a lot of fear out there, and there's a lot of people, in my experience, have no confidence and believe they've failed before they even start. So we want to help build that. We do a lot of work with local schools. We did something with a school in Hackney under 21 when we did a project where we got 12 kids in, all under 14 to 16, and told them if they were launching BT Sport, give me a project, how they would do it. And it was phenomenal, the insight that came from that and the engagement. We've had a work experience programme for 4 years. That work experience programme isn't about cheap labour, and it's not about people in BT being able to get their kids into BT Sport. It's actually, we make people apply properly. And it's about helping people identify what it means to work in broadcast, because everyone has a perception you're either on air or you've got this glamorous job, and they don't really know what it's about. So we've structured the programme to bring them in for 1 to 2 weeks, move them around and help them identify what they're good at, what they think would be enjoyable as well. We also do a readiness to work scheme. So again, working with wider BT, which has got a phenomenal record in diversity, where we're bringing in hard to reach parts of the community to actually help them get ready for work, and really important, and that's tied in with the Rio Ferdinand Foundation. So that's all the stuff behind the screens, and 90% of all of my team volunteer every year and get involved in all of these aspects as well. On screen, we're a sports broadcaster. We've, from the very start, talked about bringing sport back to the community and reflecting the community that we broadcast to. So there's a big focus on women in sport. We cover a huge multitude of women's sport. We have a Women in Sport Action Award thing as well. Our presenters relevant to those sports, we actually look for diverse, different types of presenters, not just the standard that we bring in as well. And then we've done some other aspects that I think are really, really important around outreach. So when we launched BT Sport, we launched it for free. As long as you've got BT broadband, there's always one little tie-in. But the fact that people weren't paying for great content, we actually launched an initiative called the Supporters Club, where all of those people that got BT Sport for free were encouraged to pay a contribution monthly that went into the Supporters Club. And that Supporters Club supports local community action groups, local schools, disability initiatives right across the UK. We partnered with Comic Relief on some of that, and that really did drive and make a huge difference. And we did programming around that, drove awareness around that, and got that engagement as BT. And then the other thing that we launched, I'm finishing in a minute, the other thing we launched from the start of last season is we invested around about £9 million in partnership with the Premier League, where we have created disability community officers at every single Premier League club. And that's about getting disabled youngsters into sport, not necessarily football, but in sport. And I went to the first games after the first season there, and I was blown away by the hundreds and hundreds of disabled children who were engaging and participating in sport, who prior to this initiative being launched didn't have any of that sort of community. And that's what we think BT Sport should be about, and that ethos, both on screen and off screen, is what we're trying to bring through. And I'll finish saying why we want to join the CDN.
I'm just going to check. Why do you want to join the CDN?
Well, it's I don't know, just ticking boxes. No, why we want to join the CDN is very simple. We're very new. We are trying very hard, but there is a wealth of expertise out there that other broadcasters who are established have put best practice in. For instance, we work with a lot of excellent third-party production partners and strategic partners. We don't call them suppliers. And again, looking at the stuff that Channel 4 have done, etc., is how we get our strategy out into that community. And there's best practice out there. I don't want to reinvent the wheel, but we also want to be part of the conversation and inform how things can improve moving forward. because there's still a lot to do.
Thank you very much. Excellent. We were going to have a conversation. Welcome. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
I think you may be in the right place. I'm not sure, but I think you might be.
Hopefully.
Heading in the right direction. We were going to have a bit of a chat amongst ourselves, but we don't really have time for that. So I will take questions. I've got some questions here that came through on the app that I can ask, but there are also any questions from the room. So if there are 3 questions from the room that I can take, if anyone has one, or I can just go straight to the app. Raise your hand if you can. There's a young man there.
It's Ralph from Channel 4.
I know.
Thanks for calling me young, Deborah. No, you won't. Deborah, just to go back to your diamond data, yeah? So those response rates represented 25% of the emails that got sent out. And what we're saying is at this stage, we don't think that we can draw that much of a conclusion from the data because there isn't enough. Have we got a sense of what kind of a figure we need to push people to in order to start being able to actually look at this data and make comparative sets and that kind of thing?
So, well, you see, no is the answer, is the purest answer. But what what I think we are looking at are the other levels of functionality and data that we'll get. So we're looking at the job role, we're looking at genre, we're looking at contributors, so we get a better understanding of what we think the community is of broadcast television. I think the National Centre for Social Research did an equality assurance and review of the report and the process, and from their perspective, they think the set, with time, could become a comparable data set, a good set for the industry, alongside the creative skill set work and the creative industries work the DCMS have been doing. And at the moment, I'm tentative about putting a percentage on anything. I think more than anything, for us, it's about engagement. And the more people engage with Diamond, the easier it will become for us to get a better understanding around it. Statistical percentages and tests are strange, but we are also putting in place some statistical testing so that we can build confidence within the research community and for ourselves around what level, and whether it's numbers or percentages, we think will get us to a point of benchmarking. So we're looking at it, but we're just not. So first of all, I think we need to be encouraging more people to engage and get ourselves through some of the stickiness. One of the things I will do is an equality analysis of Diamond, just to sort of get a better idea about where the problems are, what's sticking, what's working, what's not working, and then we can start drilling down deeper into gathering more data, getting a better understanding of what people need. And in particular, I think there are issues around user experience. So, for example, the email goes out, and if you don't respond within 2 weeks, the link dies. So I think things like that we need to look at, and what sort of the language of the email that goes out to people to fill in. So all of those things, we're looking at those, making sure the system's working all the way. Any more questions from the room? Pat, I think. And then I'll take a couple off the app, and then I will let you go.
Pat Young, so you can take one of mine off the app.
Which one?
Well, both of them. The question I have is about the diamond data, except you can't cut it and slice it and dice it. But of the responses you've had, how do they break down by broadcaster?
So that's the bit of functionality that at the moment we don't have and isn't ready. When it is ready, we will discuss how we share that. But at the moment, CDN doesn't have we don't have access to it in terms of functionality. It's one of the bits of the system that we're sort of waiting to make sure that it works properly. We're sort of testing it at the moment. It's in test environments. So hopefully the next time we do a publication, it will be by job role, genre, and we'll have broadcaster breakdown in there as well. Other question on the app is, let's see, Pat, I'm moving you out of Pat. So another question we have, the low number of BAME people working in the industry is often linked to class. Why do you not monitor class as part of the Diamond Survey? So the Diamond Survey, in answer to that, the Diamond was originally built around the Equality Act 2010 and around the protected characteristic groups, and class was not one of them. I think outside of Diamond, all the broadcasters are working around social mobility and class, and I think that's something that we will hope over time to begin to look at exploring the implications of that in relation, I guess, to intersectionality, as you call it, around other protected characteristic groups and what the impact of that is. But I think the other thing to say is that Diamond is not in isolation. You know, one of the big reasons for making sure that we did publish data and do publish data is to make sure it's part of the debate and it feeds into the conversation around what's going on, and that it's not either or. So Diamond will sit alongside the work that broadcasters are doing, the work that other people are doing within the creative industries, and make sure that it starts feeding and gathering off of the back of that. Which TV shows do a good job in representing diversity? I don't know. I don't watch television. And I don't watch television. I do. No, I do. Honestly, I have no idea because I don't know what good means. My version of good is different to your version of good. Is different to anyone else's version of good. For me, the stuff that I like and the stuff that I think is good practice is the stuff that is that covers more than the idea that a person is their impairment or their condition. So the stuff that talks about people, the stuff that talks about location, the stuff that conflicts. I like a bit of conflict. I also like drama, and I like documentary. So for me, that's what good stuff is that stuff that I can turn on and feel that makes sense to me and I can relate to it no differently to anything else. It's 5:20. You all want to go to McTaggart. I know you do. I want to say thank you very much for all of you being in the room, for the questions on the app. Go onto our website, send us more questions. We'll try and answer them as we can and build up a Q&A, and we'll take the questions off the app and put them into a Q&A as well and put them on our website so you have access to them. I want to thank the panel. I want to thank Jamie, Charlie and Laura very much indeed for participating.